Hi everyone. Here's what's bothering me today. It's once again been a very long and crazy week. And at first I thought, oh sure, yeah, there's a bunch of stories. I could probably whip together a narrative, but there's kind of just a lot of stuff here. So I think we're just gonna go, through the days of the week of like, yeah, this is what I saw on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and yesterday that's pissing me off. Some of these were stories I'm sure everyone's heard about. Others are probably things that we haven't heard about. And unfortunately, there are one or two that are pretty dark and distressing in terms of, there is one that involves, like the violent abuse of a nurse in Quebec. So fair warning, there's some pretty heavy stuff in some of this, but I will once again, as we get closer to the stories, be sure to say, okay, by the way, tough stuff coming up. But, yeah. The fact that I need to kind of introduce this in some part in front of what's supposed to be the casual romp through a week's worth of stories that we missed as part of the Sunday sum up, that should be a pretty good clue as to how this week has been and how today's video is gonna go. Welcome to the Sunday sum up. It's just another day in dystopia. So first off, I really want to take a minute to talk about the whole Border Patrol whipping Haitian refugees thing. That's kind of like something you would expect to see in an old black and white photo from a history textbook. But no, it's in Ultra HD 4K whatever the fuck here in 2021. As we've pointed out a few times on this channel and as the news has occasionally trotted out, it's just not been a good time in Haiti. You've had earthquakes, a very devastating earthquake, by the way. There was the assassination of their president recently. There's a ton of crime and poverty going on there. And then there was also the hurricane. So yeah, not really a good time to be Haitian. And so many Haitians have fled the country just because they have really no other opportunity. There's nothing for them in Haiti. They got to try somewhere else. But unfortunately, everywhere else is being really terrible to them. And again, the right-wing media in America was going on about, oh, look, see, they're massing under a bridge to storm our borders. It's an invasion. It's not an invasion. It's desperate people seeking safety and opportunity to succeed. It is a very human want and desire. And again, apparently I need to really stress this these days. Seeking asylum is not a crime. Literally every nation on earth has actually signed the declaration saying, yeah, no, we consider these to be human rights and asylum is definitely not a crime. These were all things that were implemented in the aftermath of, again, apparently need to remind people of this, the most destructive conflict that the world has ever seen, and yet still we need reminders of this. It is ridiculous. And yet here they are, Border Patrol, literally on horseback, whipping Haitians in a horrifying scene that looks like it belongs out of a history textbook from the 1880s. And yet here it is, clear as day. In fact, Richard Medhurst summed it up best. Whipping refugees at the border, and they have the stones to call other countries human rights abusers? Lol, the nerve. And yeah, we got some more stories like this about Biden and America and keeping in Trump rule. So don't worry, we're only just getting started here, people. But real quick, I want to sidetrack for a hot second and remind people that the ozone hole over the South Pole is now bigger than Antarctica. So I haven't even really looked at the channel analytics for here, so I don't know how many of you are very young or very old. But back in my day, I remember that acid rain and the hole in the ozone layer were kind of the big climate stories of the day of like, oh, we got to deal with this. And yeah, for a while, the ozone layer was repairing itself, it seemed to be, with us eliminating the use of certain chemicals, but it's grown. And unfortunately, scientists don't really know why. Each year, between August and October, during the Southern Hemisphere spring season, the ozone depletes over the Antarctic region, with the hole reaching a maximum size between mid-September and mid-October. This year's hole is now larger than 75% of previous ozone holes at this point in the season since 1979, though it is unclear why it has grown more than usual. So, that should potentially alarm a lot of us. We don't know why it's grown so intensely. Is it a different chemical? Is this actually kind of the first warning sign of runaway effects of climate change? We really don't know. Fun! So, yeah, that's a thing that's happening in another far-flung corner of the world. Oh, that actually can bring us to our next story, which is about Rwanda. Now, Rwanda is a complicated subject, and I'm not going to go over the whole genocide and everything, but long story short, Paul Kagame has basically been in charge of Rwanda since the genocide in the 90s, which means, yeah, he's been in power for a very long time. And it seems like, you know what, Rwanda has made great strides. It seems to be more stable. Its economy is doing well. Lots of people in this sense being economists and whatnot, see Rwanda as a bright spot in Africa because of potential for economic investment and stability. And they do seem to have made real genuine strides to wrestle with the fact that, oh yeah, we committed genocide. This is terrible. How do we try and heal this divide? What can we do to help? So there have been many good things that have come from Rwanda in the wake of that most of us would think would have destroyed many other of their neighboring nations. And one such hero from this time, which many people know from the Hollywood movie Hotel Rwanda, is that of Paul Rusesabagina. Paul Rusesabagina has been charged with treason and sentenced to 25 years in prison. Paul Rusesabagina, who was portrayed in the Oscar-nominated movie Hotel Rwanda, was found guilty on Monday of forming and funding a group that carried out terrorist attacks in Rwanda and was sentenced to 25 years in prison. The months-long case had drawn international condemnation after government officials boasted about having tricked him into returning to Rwanda. Yeah, it's a show trial, it's a scam, but the message is clear. No one is safe from criticizing dear leader Paul Kagame. It is so unfortunate to see, and yet, in a way, it's also probably going to hurt Kagame in the future, because when he's gone, there's a power vacuum. What happens then? But, like, really, you don't think anyone's going to figure out, whether they're in Rwanda or not, you think no one's going to figure out that this is just a show trial for an actual national hero from the darkest time in your nation's history? Like, really, that's, yeah. People are totally gonna buy it. That is very much justice. Oh, and speaking of justice, there's this little thing that I wanted to share with people. On September 22nd, I saw this from Canadians for Justice and Peace in the Middle East. It said, "Today, Canada is boycotting a major UN conference against racism, whose theme is reparations, racial justice, and equality for people of African descent, because a declaration 20 years ago lightly criticized Israel." Now, again, don't want to get into the whole Israel-Palestine thing, because otherwise we're going to be here for hours. But, you know, that's pretty telling just to boycott something because it lightly criticized Israel 20 years ago. And it's not like Israel has really reformed itself in 20 plus years. But then again, Canada is very much a part of the new neoliberal world order and is very terrible in that sense. So this isn't surprising, but it's still immensely disappointing, you know? And actually, related to talk of anti-Semitism, except in this case it's actual anti-Semitism, is this video out of Berkeley.
All right, guys. We are live. How's everyone doing? Have this nice banner back here. The other one didn't work out. Hey guys, Jews did 9/11. Jews did 9/11. Yeah, good work, bro. Good work. Yeah. Hey today, guys, remember that Jews did 9/11 today. They're filthy bastards that control our media. Hey.
Yeah, Berkeley Police were filmed facilitating a neo-Nazi group linked to anti-Semitic vandalism and harassment across the US, putting up a banner blaming Jews for 9/11. And then they later traded jokes about vaccinations. And then when people confronted police about this with the video evidence, here's what the police said. Berkeley Police issued statements saying they stood by neo-Nazis putting up anti-Semitic banners on 9/11 and hurling racist abuse at passerbys in order to ensure no violence against the fascists, who were armed with pepper spray and fighting gloves. Once again, cops proving fundamentally useless. It's like, you guys will pour bleach on food for the homeless and beat up protesters saying, hey, I'd like a planet to live on, please. But then literal fascists, who again are looking for a fight because they bring out the pepper spray and their fighting gloves. And then they go around deliberately being confrontational with people. And the police are like, yeah, well, we're just here to make sure nothing bad happens. Bro, they're literally committing minor offenses right here in front of you. I have seen you arrest black people for less. Again, disappointing, not at all surprising because, say it with me folks, ACAB. Also, a lot of these cops are probably secretly members of the same organization, which is why they're trading jokes, which is, again, another solid reason to defund the police, because that way you also defund a lot of fascists, which is an objectively good thing. But yeah, just so infuriating to see, oh yeah, look, we're police, we keep law and order. There's literally a disturbance going on right here and you are doing jack all. Unreal. And in tangentially related news, there's this piece from the Associated Press, which is a little concerning, and it's something people should keep in the back of their minds because this will definitely come back to haunt us all in the future. Most states have cut back public health powers amid the pandemic. Republican legislators in more than half of U.S. states, spurred on by voters angry about lockdowns and mask mandates, are taking away the powers that state and local officials use to protect the public against infectious diseases. And these aren't even temporary measures, they are very much permanent. At least 26 states passed laws that permanently weaken government authority to protect public health. In 3 additional states, an executive order, ballot initiative, or state Supreme Court ruling limited long-held public health powers. And so, as some examples, here's what the article lists. In Arkansas, legislators banned mask mandates except in private businesses or state-run healthcare settings, calling them a burden on the public peace, health, and safety of the citizens of this state. In Idaho, county commissioners, who typically have no public health expertise, can veto county-wide public health orders. And in Kansas and Tennessee, school boards, rather than health officials, have the power to close schools. So, instead of in the interest of public health, the very people who have an interest in keeping places open and, politicizing the use of masks, etc., they're the ones who actually have the power now, rather than public health officials, to make the best decisions for public health. Which means public health is fundamentally dead in half of America. So again, whether it's the current pandemic or it's a new variant in the future, or it's because of a story we're getting to soon, return of measles, mumps, rubella, etc., there is no actual mandate for public health. And so all the worst aspects from before we figured this stuff out in the 1800s is going to come back. Cities, especially impoverished areas which are criminally underfunded, are going to literally become cesspools of disease. And people will think they're safe because, oh look, we live in the good neighborhood. But because of shared communal spaces and these people being essential workers, it's going to spread throughout the public. Half of America, notably red America, has basically ensured that any kind of disease outbreak, whether it's the pandemic virus or a different virus or some other disease in the future, whatever it's gonna be, they have basically said, who needs a safe public environment? So yeah, that's a thing that's happened. Oh, and hey, remember how we talked about the whole Border Patrol whipping Haitians at the border on horseback thing? Don't worry, y'all, Biden's got this on lock. As it scrambles to deal with Haitian migrants at the border, the Biden administration is seeking a private contractor to operate a migrant detention facility at Guantanamo Bay with a requirement that some of the guards speak Spanish and Haitian Creole. Isn't that just so considerate of the Biden administration? I sure am glad my indefinite detention here at the hands of a potential torturer can at least speak my language. That's inclusion. Oh, we live in the bad timeline. Hey, look, I know my predecessor, Barack Obama, said we need to close Guantanamo Bay, and boy howdy, he tried, just couldn't get it through the Republicans, so, oh gosh darn it, and, I could totally do that now, but look, it's a new crisis, so why don't we just, on this part of occupied land, on this communist island that we really hate and keep blockading, let's just throw a bunch of migrants, that way they're out of sight, out of mind, and, no one can take pictures on the border anymore, and I still get to call myself a progressive and be seen as being better than Trump in terms of treating migrants, even though I'm actually making things worse. This is Biden's America. Which, speaking of, there's also this little revelation. President Biden is using Title 42 to expel asylum seekers without their right to hearings. Ex-President Trump invoked Title 42 citing COVID-19, but health experts say it has no medical basis. Per CNBC, it was used to expel over 440,000 people under Trump. It has been used to expel over 690,000 people under Biden. The more things change, the more things stay the same. Yes, Biden has actually expelled, using Title 42, more people than Trump. But no, he's the way better option, right? This is once again really illustrating how Team Red and Team Blue are fundamentally the same on so many issues, including really objectively terrible ones that one side will claim to support, and yet here they are just saying, yeah, no, you know what, we totally gotta move a lot of these migrants who, again, need to remind people, seeking asylum is not a crime. What they are doing here is very illegal and against international law, which they agreed to sign and uphold. And yeah, they're just gonna start shipping potentially thousands of desperate migrants from Haiti to Guantanamo Bay. What a fucking nightmare. But anyway, on with the next terrible story in today's long list of terrible stories. So a while ago, Apple actually introduced anti-tracking rules for its software and for people using the apps on the App Store. Unfortunately, some popular apps are just straight up ignoring these rules. So apparently this was in part related to a report from the Washington Post that did a deep dive into this, and their investigation was not good. The investigation found at least 3 iPhone games popular enough to make it to the top of the App Store charts, sending explicit user data to third-party advertising companies even after the user has selected the option for their information not to be collected. And Apple has done nothing about those apps' invasive methods despite being alerted to them weeks ago. You better follow these rules. No. Aw, shucks, okay, fine. And you know, what's really unfortunate about this is even though it's been told and brought into the light of, hey, these companies are basically ignoring your own personal request, they should face consequences, especially from Apple. And Apple itself is just going, whatever. Because it's all a show. It's a farce. Apple absolutely wants all that data going around because that's everything now. It's all about algorithms and data because that will unlock all the mysteries of the universe and it allows us to make even more money. And so, unfortunately, I don't think any of these companies are going to face any consequences. And Apple isn't going to face any consequences for not coming down hard on them, because it's all just part of the same terrible group of people that actually run everything on the planet. And that's what's actually going to be protected here, not people's data or data, however you choose to pronounce it. And I think that's what truly sticks in my craw about this story, is that nothing's going to come from it when it feels like perhaps in the olden days or in a different time, it absolutely would have made people go, what the heck, this is unacceptable, and even government would have gotten involved. But now government is very much in the back pocket of big business. So, oh yeah, no, we'll give them a slap on the wrist. You need to pay us, it's a $5 million fine. There's a multi-billion-dollar corporation saying, oh, we make that in a day. Okay, here you go. It's just so defeating. Anyway, here's some more of the stories I saw on September 23rd, and yikes. This means we've got to talk about some stuff that went down in the Holocaust, so content warning, anti-Semitism, violence against Jews, and mentions of Holocaust and death squads. So, yeah. Canada has a problem with not just neo-Nazis, but actual Nazis from World War II. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the terrible instance of Helmut Oberlander, because this guy is very much a former Nazi death squad member who was living in Kitchener, I believe. He kept fighting against his trial, saying, oh no, I didn't do anything bad. And you know what? Yeah, let's just go through what 570 News in Kitchener talked about. Former Nazi death squad member Helmut Oberlander has died at the age of 97. His family says the longtime Waterloo resident died peacefully in his home, surrounded by loved ones. He said he was conscripted into duty as a teenager on threat of death and that he never participated in any killings. He was born in Halbstadt, Ukraine in 1924. He has steadfastly maintained he was just 17 when he was forced, on pain of execution, to join the Nazi death squad Einsatzkommando 10A, known as EK-10A. He served as an interpreter for this group, which was part of Einsatzgruppe D when it entered Soviet Ukraine in 1941. EK-10A executed more than 40,000 people, most of whom were Jews. He was also a member of the Sicherheitsdienst and Sicherheitspolizei, the counterintelligence and security police of the Waffen-SS. He claimed his duties were limited just to being an interpreter, but either way, yikes. So yeah, a literal Nazi death squad commando member was allowed to live out his days in peace in Canada and died surrounded by loved ones. Does justice exist? If you've been following this channel for long enough, you know the answer to that question is no. On with the next story, and once again, we've got to talk about Florida. Florida Republicans now looking at rescinding measles and mumps vaccine requirements while continuing to spread disinformation that the COVID vaccine isn't proven to work. That's right, folks. Good old Florida is back at it again, saying, you know what? Because of this whole COVID-19 thing, we're going to reevaluate our view on pre-existing vaccines, because even though those may work, I'm just so swept up in all this emotion that I really want to pull back these other vaccines. And if this seems nonsensical, there's actually a bit of a weird, sinister undercurrent that they're trying to do here. As this article points out, Republicans opposed to so-called vaccine passports have faced criticism, particularly as it relates to schools where current law already requires a bevy of vaccinations. Under current law, only parents who cite religious or health reasons can exempt their children from vaccination requirements. Diaz said it might be time to review those mandates in place for such illnesses as mumps and measles, but he said there was a difference between long-tested vaccines and the new COVID-19 vaccine. So here's cutting through the political BS of that and getting right to the heart of the matter, which is that they want to reevaluate those vaccinations so that they can continue to be the ever so infamous Republican death cult that they are, so that it's all about the COVID-19 vaccine. They're saying, oh, it's time to revisit, mumps and measles, because that's their excuse for trying to reshape the policy so that they can actually force their view of no mask mandates, no COVID-19 vaccines, because this is the ideological line in the sand they've drawn to politicize a global public health pandemic. They don't care that the other vaccines are proven to work. They care about trying to make it more about the COVID-19 problem and how they want to quote unquote fight it, which is to pretend it's not that big of a deal. And this is going to negatively impact lots of students if they succeed with this. That's what all this is about. They are politicizing and playing with the literal lives of children, all for their own political points. America is sick. So now once again we come to the story I told people about earlier, which unfortunately involves violence against a nurse in Quebec. So content warning. This has to do with a TikTok, and so I'm just going to show the TikTok here.
Quebec police are searching for a man who punched a nurse in the face for giving his wife a COVID vaccine without his consent. The suspect went into the nurse's office in Sherbrooke and began shouting at her and punching her repeatedly for administering the vaccine to his wife. And police say the nurse had to be treated in hospital because the injuries to her face were so severe.
Wow. There's probably a lot more going on here. If, the woman's getting vaccinated and her husband is the guy getting mad, like, the wife is allowed to do things, my guy. And it was so bad. He beat that poor nurse so bad that she had to go to the hospital. Like, what the hell is wrong with you? This man absolutely should go to jail. And know that would really help the wife. Give her a nice long break from this ridiculously violent man. Just absolutely unreal and unacceptable. So going back to America for a hot second, remember how we talked about Biden and how he's really just continuing a lot of Trump's policies, even though he claims, oh no, we're so much better. There's more to this story. Apparently back in March 12th of 2020, Biden tweeted this out where he says, Donald Trump's remain in Mexico policy is dangerous, inhumane, and goes against everything we stand for as a nation of immigrants. My administration will end it. Which, hey, that sounds actually really nice, and that's a really good thing. However, as we saw with kids in cages, that really hasn't changed. The Biden administration is fighting in court to keep a Trump-era immigration policy. And that was just on September 20th. But yeah, guys, Biden's totally going to be so much better than Trump and just way more progressive. Is going to undo all the terrible things that Trump did, not fight to keep the same policies and perhaps even expand on them in new and more horrible ways. I guess that means we get to go to this next story that was on September 24th about the good old situation in Alberta. Now, I've talked about Alberta before and how their healthcare system is pretty much near collapse. And as of recording on September 26th, yeah, it seems to be beginning to collapse as doctors and nurses are reporting that they're having to triage patients for intubation and in critical care because there just aren't enough beds, and they have to make decisions based on who likely has a chance at survival, which, I mean, that's totally a fun, safe, and rational thing to happen in a Western developed country. Jason Kenney, you were absolutely right. Best summer ever, am I right? But there's lots of people suffering because of the selfish actions of anti-vaxxers and the unvaccinated. And that is most clearly laid out here in this tweet. My dad is currently fighting for his life at the RDRH, non-COVID related. They have an ICU bed capacity of 10 and they have 21 patients. My dad won't get a bed. He won't get the ICU care he needs. The treatment he is getting is his last option, and the nurse just FaceTimed me to say goodbye. People who refuse the vaccine may be the reason I lose my dad, and my daughter's a papa who loves them. I'll never forgive the anti-vax monsters who may take him from us. Fuck you, Jason Kenney and the Alberta legislature. I know she's saying this isn't COVID related, but it absolutely is, in the sense of people not getting vaccinated against this novel virus that has absolutely decimated many portions of the world and our economy, are still going around being selfish pricks and refusing to get unvaccinated out of ignorance or fear or both. And they are directly impacting people's health. People who, could get surgeries, they need cancer treatments. They need to be in ICU for whatever reason. And these selfish bastards are ruining it for everyone. And, like this woman points out, potentially robbing generations of family members who love them, and all unnecessarily so. And politicians like Jason Kenney in Alberta, or Ron DeSantis in Florida, or Greg Abbott in Texas are not helping by just being so ideologically driven and giving into the whole counterculture narrative. Whatever the other side's in favor of, I must oppose. And it's leading to stuff which is actually killing people. It's killing many of their own supporters, and it's directly impacting the states, the provinces, the nations that they claim to be patriots and support. It is so infuriating to see these people continue to actively participate in their own self-destruction, and many other governments and people just stand by and say, well, what can you do? We can start criminally charging these assholes. That'd be a good start. They literally have blood on their hands. It is so very, very frustrating. But we're not done yet, folks, but we are getting there. September 25th, I and many others saw this.
Stupid authority, and you think you some shit, and there's people out here ain't got no motherfucking food. How dare you? How dare both of y'all say some shit like that? There's people out here ain't got no fucking food, but y'all don't do the motherfucking garbage. How fucking dare you? I ain't eat all day, and you gonna take the motherfucking ID for fucking.
In the middle of a pandemic in the Bronx where 1 in 5 don't have enough to eat, the NYPD trashed a business and destroying produce in a food desert. So much food destroyed. And for what? Absolutely disgusting. when, again, during desperate times, like, this is something we can look forward to in the future real end times, right? People are going to be desperate trying to find food. You're going to have someone like a butcher killing and cooking pigeons for your convenience. And there's going to be some asshole coming by and saying, that pigeon meat is not licensed, so we have to throw it away, even though everyone's starving because the world has collapsed by this point. There's going to be someone like that in the apocalypse. Like, maybe it's, again, the guilt of having an immigrant father, so you better finish everything on your plate, boy, because sometimes I didn't even have enough to eat. Maybe that's playing a big part of why this is so enraging to me, but seeing literal pounds of perfectly good fruit go to waste for no really good or justifiable reason is absolutely infuriating. Wasn't there also that story a while ago about, like, cops having to guard food dumpsters in Walmart because people were dumpster diving because they just really needed food because, oh, look, they didn't have access to food and they didn't have their jobs anymore, so they're just trying to rummage around for food that had been, it expires today, so they threw it out. And the places of business were all, oh no, that's bad, so they had to have cops guarding dumpsters, which is like, you failed as a society when you're producing a lot of food, and yet for whatever dumb, terrible, evil reasons, you are not letting people have food. It is beyond wasteful. But hey, don't forget, folks, capitalism is the most efficient system. And then here, at the end of all things, we have something from yesterday. Apparently, according to the Latino Rifle Organization, California just passed a law authorizing the release of firearm transaction records to any research institution which requests them. So any random grad student can just get your name, address, date of birth, and every firearm or ammunition purchase you've ever made in California. Now, as a Canadian, I have some thoughts on this because this is kind of scary, but also kind of weird in that in some ways, this is, some of that information is definitely what the RCMP get because we have to register to be firearms owners. But the idea of just a random grad student being able to access that's another matter entirely. So yeah, in some ways, California has just passed, in a certain context, stricter gun legislation than Canada, but in another context, the opposite is also true. Either way, it is fairly concerning that California just passed a law that would allow someone, perhaps with, let's say, not necessarily benign interests, to just get this information. And it's also weird that they could get any ammunition purchase. I'm not even sure if Canada and the RCMP track that. Like, yes, you need your PAL if you want to go to Cabela's or something like that, and oh yeah, I gotta get some ammo because I'm going plinking at the range, or it's deer season, or it's duck season, whatever it might be. Like, yeah, you get a receipt. I don't know if that is also sent to the RCMP of like, yeah, they bought X rounds of ammunition at this location at this time of day. I really don't know, but that still is very concerning. And so I think if there's any theme to be pulled from, let's just run through the days and see how terrible this week gets, that's the theme. All of this is so deeply concerning, from the hole in the ozone layer inexplicably getting much larger, Joe Biden carrying on the proud tradition of Trump's policies, information just still being collected despite you as a user saying, please don't collect my data, random students getting access to your entire firearms history, Floridians deciding, you know what, maybe certain vaccines need to be revisited even though we know they work for political reasons. All these stories and more have the air of, oh my god, this is really concerning. And yet they're happening. They've been happening for a while, and they're going to continue to happen. Unless we actually get our act together and, like, do a revolution or something. It is so distressing and disheartening. And I know I've said this before in just a myriad of ways, but a lot of the undercurrent of all of this ties back to capitalism. It is capitalism and the interests of the business elite that are saying, whoa, hey, we can't have too many migrants because, like, oh, there's taxes and blah, my industry and blah, I only want to hire them overseas. I don't want them here. It It is capitalism that continues to destroy the planet and results in the ozone layer still not being fixed after all these years. It is capitalism that says to us with a straight face, hey, you can't close down schools and whatnot because we need people and places to be open for business, because think of the economy. So what if people get sick and die? Think of the economy. It is also capitalism that wants all your data so that they can try and sell you more shit that you don't need. And we even have an expression, right? Money is the root of all evil. And yet the pursuit of money is seen as a good thing under the guise of a capitalist system. You are encouraged to be proverbially evil under a capitalist system. So then is it any wonder that the world seems to be destroying itself, and everywhere you look, there is just terrible news and evil people and just evil, despicable stories happening. Capitalism is all about productivity and capital gains and making profit. That is the acquisition of wealth. And if money is the root of all evil, then capitalism is an evil system. And yet apparently enough people don't just make that very simple connection and recognize, you know what? Yeah, maybe this whole capitalism thing is a mistake. What happens after that? Socialism, facadism, anarchy, whatever it may be, all of us should be able to agree based on these very simple truths and just a casual scroll through these Sunday sum up videos at this point. All of us should be able to realize that this is a very real evil system that we are allowing to persist because evil triumphs when good people do nothing. And the politicians that we keep electing, by the way, are complicit in this because big business has just bought the political elites themselves. Hell, oftentimes they're just from the same family, or they, oh, look, I was in business, now I'm in politics, or, oh, I was a politician and so I made all these decisions that really helped big business. Please ignore the fact that I'm now part of this huge lobbying firm making a 7-figure income a year. We're still playing these weird little political games, and I'm also guilty of this too, talking about the politicization of the virus in places like Florida, because that's just spectacle. At the end of the day, these guys are still just all on the same side of the economy, big money, big business. It needs to be stopped. And real talk, we all know how it has to be stopped. And yet, with every passing month and every passing day and every passing year, we get further and further from chances to actually fix our problems non-violently. I would love to have a peaceful transition away from all of this terrible stuff. But unfortunately, at the rate we're going, that's not going to happen. And that's what's bothering me today.